next year at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, guess what? We're going to find a way to watch that thing because we're that deep into it. And guess what? I watched most of the show last night.
I'm going to be honest. I was following as one is wont to do on X, and I just kept seeing things pop up, and I was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean schedule reveal? Sure enough, schedule reveal. But here's the genius of the SEC. Later on, we're going to find out the times of the game.
Exactly. That is a whole
nother show.
Separate thing later on down the line. So if you'll remember, I think it was 2 summers ago, so 2023, I think is when they announced who the opponents were going to be for the next year. We didn't know dates or anything like that. They just announced who you're playing. Then later on, we found out what days you're playing them. Then later on, we found out what times you're playing them. It's a whole process.
They got us. Big football wins again. It's a racket. And guess what? We'll be right there.
That's right.
We'll be right there. So we'll talk about that a little bit during the next segment. We'll talk about the schedule. We get a way too early reactions, way too early ups, downs, start, bench cuts. We'll do all of that for the schedule because it's out. Have some player movement that we'll talk about. Still haven't found a good way to talk about a good term for recommitting, coming back, signing.
Yeah, we're just going with signed a new deal as of right now, which again is off-putting to a lot of people, and I understand that. Yeah, we got to come up with a new phrase. So we on the Gamecock Central Hour.
Okay.
When
do they have something?
Well, not for that, but when guys started calling their own red shirts back in September, saying, "Hey, played 4 games. I'm going to sit out the rest of the year. I'm going to enter the transfer portal and seek a better opportunity." We call that self-shirting.
Okay.
So
y'all are on pace.
We need to put our heads together and figure out a new way to
Chris, get on
this
it.
as.
Chris, get on it. We need something like that. You can have self-service. You can have self-shirts. It's fine, but we need to get something like that. So we got a lot to talk about. Apparently, coaches are going back to where they came from.
Yes.
Heating up old flames.
Yeah, and you know, who says you can't go home again, I guess. But sometimes home isn't the same home you left all those years ago.
That's so we will talk about some of that. So again, for a midweek day in the middle of December, college football won't stop.
I'll take it. You know, we finally hit that little lull between conference championships and now the start of the playoffs coming up next week. Yeah, you got Army-Navy on Saturday and the Heisman Trophy ceremony, but typically this is where the news cycle slows down a little bit, but thankfully we've had some good stuff this week.
It has not slowed down, and speaking of have not slowing down, let's get out to our guy, Gamecock Larry. Gamecock Larry, how you doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing okay. Had a pretty rough night. I just want to say good morning to Jen, Preston, and Tyler, and Gamecock Nation. I love all y'all. Keep me in your prayers. But you know what? I woke up this morning and looked at that schedule, and I see an undefeated season next year. And they ought to take on Clemson, and I don't forget, take them off the schedule. They ain't going to have nothing with the game Cox next year. But 12-0. And, you know, I wanted to say something. Hello, all the nurses at Lexington Medical Center. Oh, Gamecock Larry is going to be all right. I love all y'all. Keep me in your prayers. And go Gamecocks. Texas by 17 over the Tigers. I love y'all. Keep me in your prayers. Okay? Cock Larry gonna be okay. When I go, when I stay, I'm a winner. Hey, either way, keep love y'all. Bye-bye.
He got that score in,
yes,
man.
He did.
That's a
called the shot for next year as well.
We got a sonnet at the end. We got the next year's score prediction. We got the Tigers playoff prediction. Quality call.
Also, just take Clemson off the schedule. They don't add any value to the schedule.
Hot take. So, again, we always appreciate you, Gamecock Larry. Thank you for listening. Thank you for calling in. Speaking of schedule, 12-0. Next segment, let's dive into the schedule, I guess, since we're here. We're here now.
Nothing better than predicting wins and losses 10 months ahead of time.
Let's do what Gamecock Larry already said, 12-0, so I guess we don't have to spend that much time on that segment. Appreciate y'all listening, tuning in. This is Preston Thorne, Tyler Head, Jen Jensen. This is the early game.
Clemson Road near Longtown Road. We do have a report of an accident early this morning. And aside from that, things really okay out there. It's just a lot chillier than it was yesterday, like about 36 degrees worth. It's looking for high today of 55, but we will have sunny skies. The rain is out of here. Tomorrow's high 58. Tonight, the overnight low is 30. Friday night into Saturday morning, we're looking at 37 for the overnight low. But again, temperature-wise, not too bad for the rest of the week. 55 today, 58 tomorrow, 60 on Saturday, 56 on Sunday. So a little more moderate. We'll take that. But cool start today. It's 31 currently on the early game.
Yeah, it'll be different. There's no question about it. That game was scheduled, I believe, when I got the job here at South Carolina. It was already on the books, and knew it was coming. But it'll be exciting. Obviously, a place with great memories. That my dad and what he did there. I'm sure there's going to be quite a bit of talk over the next 8-9 months leading up to that game. But it'll be fun. Got a lot of great friends there. Brent Pry was a graduate assistant on the coaching staff when I was a player at Virginia Tech, and got a ton of respect for their program. And it'll certainly be different, hearing that Virginia Tech fight song and seeing a lot of maroon and orange along with a lot of garnet and black in the stands that day.
That was Shane talking about, he didn't mention it to the end, talking about the first game of the new schedule, which was revealed on the schedule reveal yesterday. We've known about this game for a while. The Virginia Tech game has been scheduled. And it's one of these things where games are scheduled a long time ago, and you're like, 2025, like, that's so far away.
Sure.
We're never going to get there. Why would they schedule games so far away?
It's one of those things, as you mentioned, it was already on the schedule when he got hired, almost 5 years ago now. I imagine when it was announced, you were probably doing the math like, okay, the freshmen playing in that game are probably currently like 6 years old as of right now or something ridiculous like that, because these things do get scheduled so far in advance that you can kind of forget about them. You're like, oh, yeah, that's happening next year.
Forgot that was happening. And especially amongst the recent conversation about talking about, well, I guess we shouldn't have any challenging non-con games, and that's been the recent conversation. But that will be the first game to set it off in Atlanta. I'm sure there'll be some interesting emotions for Shane for that game.
I'm sure. First of all, who does Frank cheer for?
That's a tough one, man. I mean, Shane is your son, that's fine and all, but
you are Virginia Tech football.
Yes, you are Virginia Tech. I don't know. I'd be interested. Maybe he wears one of those split jerseys.
Maybe so.
Yeah, the hat that has like two bills, and he kind of puts it sideways or something, or front and back. Mm-hmm.
Which I don't enjoy neutral site games in the regular season, especially like week number 1, because how cool would it be to go up to Blacksburg for this game and get to experience Virginia Tech, or them coming down here and getting to experience Williams-Brice Stadium? I am so much more in favor of home and homes. Like I hope as the playoff expands and we have more of these neutral site games the back half of the year, that kind of takes away these games in week number 1. Because, again, I think home and home is much more valuable.
Well, like everything, the neutral site game was a creation of big football,
big
college football.
They wanted to create a bowl game in week 1, essentially.
They wanted to, exactly. We wanted to get something. And it was cool early when it started. But then I think we started to realize that part of the charm of college football is the home atmosphere. And it's a good thing that they incorporated that into the playoffs.
And sure, when you had a week 1 matchup with Alabama and Michigan playing in Jerry World, they did that back in 2012. Okay, that's like a huge marquee game that everybody in the country is like, ooh, let me focus in on that. But South Carolina, Virginia Tech, and Atlanta, I don't know if that moves the needle as much outside of the respective bubbles, as opposed to, hey, Carolina's going into Blacksburg for a week 1 game. That, to me, is a lot more exciting.
Yeah, that would absolutely be cool. But here's the thing. When we're talking about it from a football aspect, I guess neither team was quite sure where they would be at this moment.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at the trajectory of these two programs right now, obviously I'm assuming Carolina will go into this game as a favorite.
Probably.
Virginia Tech is I don't know if struggling is too strong of a word or if it's the appropriate word, but the program is not where they thought it was going to be. And there seems to be, I mean, if we're doing early schedule reveals, let's go ahead and do hot seats also. Let's go maximum college football here.
I was going to say, he mentioned Brent Pry. Is he going to be the coach by the time this game rolls around next year? That's a legitimate question. Look, they're 6-6. They're going to the Mayo Bowl, but his tenure has been 16-20 so far, under 500 in conference play. They were thought of coming into this year as a legitimate dark horse for the ACC, and they didn't come anywhere close.
And I'm not joking about this at all. The thing that may have saved Brent Pry's job was Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt actually being good for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Because
that week, it was a week 1 game.
Yes.
We're like, oh, my God, Vanderbilt upset Virginia Tech. They're like, oh, Vanderbilt's just the better team than Virginia Tech this year.
Exactly. Early in the season, when people were like, what? Oh, his seat was on fire. And I'm sure he was watching the game, and he's probably being like, I told you.
See, they beat Alabama.
Look at them. They're pretty good. So you have that first game against Virginia Tech. Then you go throughout the schedule. South Carolina State up next. Hopefully, it'll be the Celebration Bowl winning HBCU champion South Carolina State Bulldogs. They got the game coming up this Saturday.
We'll have to get your whole crew in here for that one.
We'll get Nashawn. We'll get everybody in here. That'll be a lot of fun. Also, there'll be ample opportunity for Shane to say, hey, we can't sleep on these guys.
Yeah, it's like, hey,
Celebration
Bowl champions.
Yeah, can't
watch out for these guys. Jordan Howe, we got him from there a couple years ago, like high-caliber talent.
We'll have that coming in. Then you have Vandy, first 3. Vandy up next after that. Not sure what that means without Diego Pavia being there.
His lawsuit didn't end up going through with the extra eligibility. I don't believe so.
They didn't issue a stay or anything like that. I think that's probably just going to die in court.
He'll be gone.
He'll be gone. And then after that, for the first 4 games, the first quarter of the season will be Missouri.
It's a pretty manageable start to the year. Again, you're probably going to be heavy favorites against Virginia Tech, beat SC State, assuming Vanderbilt is kind of going to be what Vanderbilt's going to be, then that's a 3-0. Yeah, going to Missouri is a place that you've never won at, which is obviously tough. And then after that, before you go into your first bye, you get Kentucky. I'd say there's a very solid chance you start the season 5-0.
Ooh, you went 5-0.
I went 5-0.
Okay, I think so. We're almost halfway to Gamecock Larry saying 12-0.
Yeah.
All right, so first four games of the season, Virginia Tech, South Carolina State, Vanderbilt, Missouri. And God bless Chris and Wes. If you go to Gamecock Central, Chris already had a rapid reaction, which these guys are on top of everything. But none of these games are in the top half of what he would consider the schedule.
No,
only one he had up there was possibly Missouri at 6.
You get a pretty good light ramp up to the toughest portion of your schedule, which comes next.
Which is really important because traditionally in the Shane Beamer era, this team has warmed up throughout the year.
Yep.
They've struggled early, and they've turned it on towards the end of the season. So this schedule lines up with the way that we've seen these teams play realistically. When we come back, we'll finish analyzing. We'll get as college football as possible. We'll get into transfer portals. We'll talk about early schedule releases. This is Maximum College Football Day in the middle of December. This is the early game.
Clemson Road near Longtown Road, still have that accident to let you know about. And I-26 eastbound at exit 97. You'll also find a slowdown due to an earlier tie-up. A little bit chillier than it was yesterday. This time yesterday it was about 67. Well, right now it's 31. So you're definitely bundling up. But we'll get to a high today of 55 with sunny skies. 58 tomorrow. But again, overnight it'll be about 37. As I mentioned, kind of chilly. 31 on the early game.
Welcome back into the early game. Preston Thorne, Tyler Head, Jen Jensen. Max college football for the mid-December era. I mean, again, the news is not stopping. The news is not stopping. We have coaches going back to their schools. We have schedule releases. We have recommits, transfer portals, acquisitions, as I've seen the word saying here.
Hey, man, I'll take it.
Yes, the content gods have been nice to us because, man, there's some times when you're scraping the barrel around here. So we're good. We're good. So we got a lot. So let's finish out this schedule. Let's go through this schedule, and let's run through it just straight through. So you start off with Virginia Tech. You go to South Carolina State. After that, you play Vanderbilt, Missouri. That's the first quarter of the schedule. From that, you have Kentucky at home. You're at LSU, Oklahoma at home, Alabama at home. A nice 2-game stretch of home games there. That's the second quarter. Third quarter, Ole Miss, at Texas A&M, Coastal Carolina, and then Clemson at home. And again, you know, obviously this is available for everybody, so you can look out there and see how this sort of plays out. So really quickly, we'll continue breaking down the schedule. But as you looked at the schedule, Tyler, what's the home game that you're most anticipating?
I mean, it's hard not to be excited about Alabama coming to town, right? Like, obviously that is a brand that, when's the last time they came here?
Well, you know, obviously we always talk about the
2010 game, obviously, but I know they've come since then.
I think the last time we came, it will.
That's how it goes for a lot of people when they welcome Alabama in. But
it wasn't great.
Considering how you played against them this year, and considering that they definitely don't seem to be the same Alabama they were the last time they came to Columbia, I feel like they got a pretty good chance in that one. Now, again, they're going to have a lot of high-caliber talent. We're going to see what they're going to do in the transfer portal, but they're not the unslayable dragon that they used to be.
And we are different.
Exactly. Both squads are different. And I think that's really interesting that you all say that, because even as I'm reading Chris Clark's article here, which is an awesome rapid reaction, I don't know how these guys do this, but he had as the 5th most difficult game on the schedule. And what world are we living in where Alabama is the 5th most difficult game on a 12-game schedule? That seems it's factual, I think, but it's just odd.
Something you wouldn't have believed 2 years ago.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So things are changing. So those are the schedules. We'll come back later. We'll look at the home games as we look at that. But that being said, college football is maximum college footballing right now. And so we're talking about the transfer portal. We're talking about players recommitting. We're talking about acquisitions. And David out on the phone line had some thoughts about that. David, what you got, man? Thank you for listening.
No problem. Hope y'all are doing well. The schedule pretty much same as last year other than the outer conference. Biggest thing is between the Missouri and the Clemson games, Carolina, and it's an old cliche, I know, but they're learning how to win, which I think is very important. And as far as Dylan Stewart and those guys go, I prefer to say that they reaffirm their commitment. Appreciate what y'all do. Have a good one.
I like that.
That's the best one I've heard. That's the best one I've heard. They reaffirm their commitment.
That has a very positive connotation to it. You reaffirmed yourself to the University of South Carolina. I might roll with that one.
I think
Good job, David.
Appreciate it.
Checks in the mail.
You might get the call of the day for the day. And that actually sounds a lot better than re-signing or signed a new deal.
It's like, okay, you're here, and you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to continue to be here, and now that we've come to this agreement with NIL and all that kind of stuff, so yeah, reaffirmed commitment. I like that.
So reaffirming their commitment. We're going to roll with that. That's the early leader.
It's like the renewing your vows of college football. It's like, okay, yeah, we're married, and we're just going to confirm that, yeah, we're still married. We're going to keep this rolling. We're good. We're good.
We're still here. So with that being said, Casey Henry is back.
Yes.
There was an announcement made for Casey Henry. Now, here's where the discrepancy and the wackiness of college football comes in. Because Nick Barrett is back also, but I did not see an announcement for him. So I don't know how that works.
There was no graphic for Nick Barrett?
I didn't see a graphic.
Okay, maybe they've not completely finalized his deal. He's not completely reaffirmed his commitment. But look, I think we all knew he was coming back. He's somebody that's been here for, I guess, 4 years already now and didn't get as much run this year because there's just so much depth on the defensive line. But he's going to be kind of one of the key guys on that line next year. Going to need some more help around him in terms of depth, which is going to be a key priority, certainly in the transfer portal, in this offseason. But again, he was somebody that we expected to have no issues in coming back for another year.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to have to start having, like, how they would have signing days and where they're sitting at the table and they're picking which hat they put on. And we're going to have to start doing this again for the reaffirming.
Not just that, but when guys are in the transfer portal deciding where they're going, I'm really surprised we've not had hat ceremonies for some of these high-level guys. Like, hey, former 5-star quarterbacks in the transfer portal, where's he going to go? All right, 3 hats on the table. It's, Southern Cal, Texas, and Ohio State. Which one's he going to pick? Like, I'm really surprised we haven't done that yet.
And now, with NIL deals, they could actually be showcasing their sponsor stuff on the table and give more exposure there.
It gets better and better. And I'm all for the public humiliation of it. I say we just line the coaches up also and then have the coaches' instant reactions when they don't pick their team.
Oh, man.
And you can just see them just sink into their chair.
I like where we're going
at least on a Zoom.
Listen,
we can at least do the Zoom technology.
As starved as we are for football content all the time,
I'll watch it.
You tell me there's an hour-long feature on SEC Network of just high-level guys committing to new schools or whatever. I'm down with it. I'm gonna watch.
Let's go out to Shane Beamer at the facility. Shane, did he pick him? I don't know if he's gonna pick me, man. You just see Shane on the Zoom.
Yeah.
And then they pick him and Shane starts celebrating. I mean, this is perfect.
Yeah. And then Lincoln Riley didn't pick your school. Your thoughts?
We're going to get the next one, blah, blah, blah. This is perfect. I think we're on to something here. We're on to something.
All right, so we need to pitch this to whomever, the NCAA or something, and then we need to get credit and be a part of it.
I mean, we have connections at ESPN. We could try and put that in their ear, right?
Let's just put that out there. So that was the reaffirms. Unless I missed any, I believe Casey Henry and Nick Barrett the ones that I saw.
The latest ones from yesterday.
On the flip side of reaffirming, we have folks that are entering the transfer portal, and I have Elijah Davis as the most recent. Do you have anybody else as far as news is concerned?
And by the way, Wes and Chris do a very good job of keeping all the latest up here.
Job.
I believe that's the latest one that I saw go in there.
Okay.
So I'm sure you've heard Wes talk about healthy transfers, right?
Yes.
These guys that,
I have, but maybe these folks have, so maybe explain that.
So essentially, look, in today's world of college football, every team loses guys to the transfer portal. It's just going to happen. There's guys farther down your roster that don't play or didn't get the, experience that they thought they were going to get, and they decide to go elsewhere. It's part of it. When you have guys that aren't major contributors going into the transfer portal, it's like, okay, that's fine. We call those healthy transfers because, again, that's kind of expected. When you are losing, even last year, like Juice Wells, who was expected to be your wide receiver number 1, that's a concern because you're losing something that is going to be a key part of your upcoming season. Obviously, we ended up being okay even without Tim, but those are the kind of things that worry you. When a guy that's not getting a lot of run, like an Elijah Davis, who, again, we talked about a lot as maybe he could do this, maybe he could do that, and just never materialized for whatever reason, that's a healthy transfer.
And also, now I have to see whether these transfer healthy transfers, unhealthy. This is so awesome.
So many terms.
I'm personally, honestly, going back to the Juice Wells thing. How is he feeling right now?
Not great.
Yeah, like chase the money. How's that working for you?
Sometimes things don't work out for you.
I'm not sure if he's going to get drafted.
Well, listen, he has the skills. If he decides to ever want to really play, he has the skills to be a NFL wide receiver. There's no doubt about that. That's why we were so salty about him leaving. something went sideways at Ole Miss. I don't know what the problem is. Obviously, it did not work here. He's going to have to get himself back on track to figure things out. But there's no question that his stock, his reputation, and his draft prospects, he's made it harder on himself.
Definitely.
That's 100% clear. And that's hey man, that's part of growing up. You make a choice.
Yep.
As we'll talk about with Scott Frost. Hey man, sometimes you don't need to go to the next spot when you already have a good thing here.
And, his reasoning of, well, I don't know what I have in the quarterback situation, like, I get that. But at the same time, the North Steelers had a really high upside. You knew he was probably going to hit his stride at some point, which he did in the back half of the season, and you could have been part of that.
Right.
But you chose not to.
Right. And so that's when you talk about that was a decidedly unhealthy transfer for both sides. But then you look at some other folks that left, and they might have worked out. I think, obviously, the linebacker room got better this year, and the guys that left the linebacker room last year, they ended up going and playing.
Yep.
I'm thinking about Pup Howard and Stone Blanton.
Stone Blanton was
both of them went home,
regular
played.
starter at Mississippi State.
So those worked out both for those guys, and it sort of worked out on both ends, and that's what you'll end up seeing a lot of times with the transfer portal, or how it ends up working. Hopefully, with the ability for people to be able to move and people having agency over their careers and their lives, you make a choice, and then you have to deal with the consequences, good or bad. But at least you have the opportunity to make that choice.
And again, I'm kind of looking at, 13 guys have entered the portal for Carolina as of right now. The names that really stick out, again, Robbie Ashford, just because he was the backup quarterback and obviously had to start the game against, Akron earlier on this year. DJ Braswell, from the fact that he played last season, but wasn't really doing anything this year. But other than that, no real names that really jump out at you. You say, oh, no, can't lose that guy. Again, it's kind of part of the process now.
Yeah, it is part of the process. So we're Maximum College Football in the middle of December today. Going back to a vibe check. When we come back, we got a little bit of a vibe check based on the schedule and the idea of revenge. We want to say, which one do we want revenge? We'll get back to that. This is the early game. I'm Preston Thorne. That's Tyler Edge. She's Jen Jensen. We'll see you back. Welcome back into the early game. Preston Thorne, Tyler Head, Jen Jensen. We are maximum college football today. Everything that we love about college football, everything that Bill Belichick might actually despise about college football, we're doing today. Early schedule releases, transfer portal, recruiting, everything that you love about the game.
I don't know how it's going to work, man. I'm intrigued to watch it happen, but I don't know if it's going to work.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll get to that next segment. We want to have a little bit more conversation about that. But my question today for the vibe check, 803-404-6100, revenge. We need the revenge on these 3 losses.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We have 3 losses, and we play these same teams again. By the way,
do you like that, playing the exact same teams back-to-back years?
Yes, I do, just for this purpose.
Okay.
Just for the get back. Because I don't like the idea that you can beat me and then we don't play each other again for 4 years.
Sure. Okay.
And since we don't have divisions anymore, I need a little, and this may be just me being old, I just need a little bit of continuity. Let's just play at least 2 years. I don't need 3, but 2 is fine. Because of home and home.
Yeah, and we think it's kind of a placeholder until the schedule dynamics change in the SEC. But, yeah, it is kind of weird doing it this way in the short term at least.
It is. But, so here's the deal. Start, bench, cut. We got 3 losses.
Yep.
We need to figure out start, bench, cut, meaning start the one you want the most, cut meaning the one that obviously we want them all.
Sure.
But that one's on the back burner. So we have Bama at home. We have Bama at home on October 25th. After that, we have Ole Miss on November 1st at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And then we have, and I skipped a little bit, we have LSU at LSU. So we're October 11th, we're at LSU. We have Bama at home on October 25th and at Ole Miss on November 1st. Start, bench, cut. Which losses do we want to avenge the most?
So I'm going to start at LSU.
Okay.
Because of just how notoriously hard it is to play in Death Valley and going in there and winning. And no matter how good or bad LSU is, winning in Death Valley is a huge accomplishment and something that you hang your hat on. And
will they have the live tiger?
It didn't work out well for them last time. So I'd say probably not.
All right.
I'm probably going to bench beating Alabama at home. Because, look, beating Alabama anytime is obviously a huge accomplishment. What is Alabama by the time we get to that game is kind of my question. Because, again, they're a team that was fringe playoff just like Carolina is this year, but the perception of what they are under Kalen DeBoer will have had a year and a half at that point in time. We may not think of that game quite as big halfway through next year as we were thinking that it could be as of right now. Just saying. So I'm going to put that on the bench. And then I guess you'd have to cut Ole Miss at Ole Miss, which, hey, winning the Grove, that's cool. It's not the most raucous and, intimidating environment, so I don't think you get points for that one necessarily. Obviously, you want to avenge all 3 of these losses, but I would take the LSU and Alabama games before the Ole Miss game.
803-404-6100. Which loss do you want to avenge the most? Start, bench, cut. LSU, Alabama, or Ole Miss? I like your thinking behind this. It's just wild to me to say that, again, based on Chris's article in Gamecock Central, his rapid reaction, that he placed Bama as the 5th.
Yeah.
A mid-tier game. Absolute mid, as the kids say these days,
yeah,
right?
It's like,
That's amazing. And to boot, he has Ole Miss as the most difficult game.
Interesting.
And I think that's a combination of it's an away game, also the roster management, also Lane Kiffin, also probably the way that we lost to them last year.
Sure.
So there is a lot to say about that. I think I'm gonna go with I'll start LSU for all the reasons you said. Going down to the real Death Valley, winning a game is always a cool thing. You always want to come out of there. Hopefully we get a night game out there so those guys get a chance to experience that. Bench Ole Miss, because I just want to beat Lane. I just get tired of Lane talking.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear Lane. It's one thing for Lane to talk. It's another thing for us to have beaten him, and then he continues to talk. I'd have no problem with him talking if we actually beat them. And then last, not excited. I don't know if the thrill is gone or what it is, but of course, I think I more so want to beat Bama, not because it's Bama, but because it's a home game.
Yeah.
And I want to hold serve at home.
Looking at Alabama's schedule for next year, so the Carolina game will be the 7th on their schedule. Before they play Carolina, they have to play at Georgia, and they play Tennessee the week before in the third Saturday in October. So, I mean, they could be 5-2 coming in, and that's still a good team. But again, it's not undefeated number 1 Nick Saban Alabama. It's like, okay, a solid Kalen DeBoer coached Alabama team, which doesn't quite have the same juice to it.
No, and it doesn't. And then this is a minus of Jalen Milroe, Alabama also,
as
right?
well.
So we haven't seen Kalen DeBoer without a first-round quarterback, and I'm not sure what they have in the pipeline. I'm sure that they have something coming. But
they had the 5-star quarterback last year, Julian Sayin.
Okay.
That I don't know if he's going to be the starter next year. I know Dylan Lonergan went in the portal yesterday. I think Ty Simpson's still technically hanging around, so I don't know where they're going to go.
Yeah,
but,
you just naming names to me.
Jalen Milroe was special, and he's not going to be there next year.
Right, and so we haven't even seen a Kalen DeBoer team with an average quarterback. We've only seen his teams be successful with great quarterbacks, first-round type of dudes. So I don't know how that game plays out, but it's interesting to hear that in the context of their whole schedule. Jen?
I was just say, it just makes me wonder how many people have gone into the transfer portal from Alabama this year as opposed to under the Saban reign.
Ooh, it's a good question.
And how many of those are healthy or unhealthy?
That's true. They had obviously a lot of guys that jumped in once Saban retired. Caleb Downs, obviously went to Ohio State. Monkel Goodwine obviously came here. I'm intrigued to see just how many because there's probably a lot of guys like, well, let me give Kalen DeBoer a chance. Mm-hmm. Let's see what this is. And you missed the playoff. It's kind of unacceptable in Alabama. Let's see how many guys decide to go in the portal now.
I mean, he has a really cool office that you can go talk to him in, compared
It looks
to
like an Apple store.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually showing somebody the other day that comparison between, I know it's old news, but it's just so stark.
Very, very different styles.
Which that rubs a lot of people the wrong way in Tuscaloosa, much like his T-shirts on the sideline.
Yeah.
Anything. Yeah, we got to see what he's going to be wearing. A lot of things. Maximum College Football. Here we come. And when we come back, we're going to discuss Chapel Bill. They've done it. Even though most of y'all said that you wanted the check, please, they cut the check.
They've done something.
When we come back, we'll discuss it. This is the early game. Preston Thor, Tyler Head, Jed Jensen.
Still working earlier tie-up. Clemson Road near Longtown Road. I-26 eastbound at exit 97. And other than that, we're saying this disabled vehicle could be impacting traffic a little bit. I-26 eastbound between Piney Grove and St. Andrews Road. And forecast, a little bit different than it was. The rain is out of here, which is great. Sunny today, 55 for the high. Overnight low of 30. Tomorrow's high, 58. Overnight low, 37. The mornings will warm up just a little bit. Saturday, we're looking for a high of 60. So we'll welcome that. I mean, come on. It's mid-December. We'll take it. But it is feeling a little December-ish right now. It's only 31 right now on 107.5 The Game.
Welcome into the second hour of the early game. It's Preston Thorne, Tyler Head, Jen Jensen. College football is maximum college football. We have a lot to discuss, so much so to discuss that we don't even have it on the rundown that a legislator in Ohio tried to put a law in place for people to commit felonies on college football fields.
I have that for me and Jack from 9 to 10, so if we don't get to it, I'll get to it today.
I mean, there's just so much has even happened. We couldn't even get to the most ridiculous of college football stories. But let's talk about this. Chapel Bill.
Yes.
Yesterday we had on the vibe check and we said, Bella cut the check or Bella check please. And a majority of us listening, majority of you all listening said check please. Most people did not want any parts of this if you were a part of the North Carolina fan base. But now the deal is done. 3 years, $30 million, which we'll put a pin in that. We're going to get back to that in here in a second. 3 years, $30 million. Bill Belichick is named as the head coach, the newest head coach of the University of North Carolina, in an unprecedented youth movement where they've gone from 73-year-old Mac Brown to 72-year-old.
Hey, got 1 year younger.
Got a year younger and a year better. This is interesting. And you brought up something off air, and I'm all for interesting. So I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm here for at least doing something interesting. And you brought up something off air where he's like, yeah, college football hirings have been pretty interesting over the past 5, if not 10 years.
Yeah, let's think about it. Herm Edwards, after being on the ESPN desk for, 10, 15 years, said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go coach Arizona State. Didn't work. Trent Dilfer
did not work to the maximum extent.
To the maximum extent. And he kind of came in with the same philosophy as Bill Belichick. Hey, we're going to NFL this. We're going to do it this way, the same way they did in the league. And that didn't work. And obviously Kenny Dillingham's got him in good place in the playoff now. Trent Dilfer, his disaster at UAB, which he's still there. It looked like he was about to be ousted. That didn't end up happening. Deion Sanders is coaching at Colorado. That's obviously working out pretty well. But, these are names and types of guys that we would have never thought would have been coaching college football. And if you would have gone back even 2 years ago and said, hey, Bill Belichick's going to be coaching at North Carolina in 2025, nobody would have believed you. There's no way that's going to happen. But now in this new world of college football and chaos from coast to coast, I guess anything's possible.
Yeah, and anything is possible. And when you're looking at this, as you said, I saw we can't call them tweets anymore. X doesn't sound as good. It's where you get into these problems. But it would just talk about the amount of changes. I saw an X. That's not.
Yeah, just call it tweets.
And when they say repost or post, it's post is boring.
But it was this is from College Sports Only, and it said, imagine someone telling you on January 1st of this year, Indiana would be in the playoff, SMU would be in the playoffs, Boise State and Arizona State would have byes in the playoffs, Ohio would try to make a felony out of a flag planting. Nick Saban would be the funniest guy on College Game Day. Bill Belichick would be coaching at North Carolina, and Florida State would go 2-10.
Yeah. Again, this doesn't surprise us anymore because chaos has just been happening from left to right. So now when the rumors of this started popping up roughly about a week ago, it wasn't like oh my God. It was like, okay, that's different, but sure, why not? I guess it could happen. Here's my question. Well, you talked about his contract that's allegedly 3 years, $30 million. Does he deserve to suddenly be one of the top 10 highest paid coaches in college football, having never coached at this level before?
That's a really interesting point. I don't know.
NFL pedigree speaks for itself, but he's never done this before.
I don't love getting in the habit of spending other people's money, but you're right. It's really interesting. I wrote those down, and you said the top 10. Kirby's at 13. Dabble's at 11. Sark's at 10.
Yep.
Lincoln Riley at 10. Ryan Day at 10.
He'd come in tied with Kalen DeBoer and Mike Norvell for 6th on the list for highest paid coaches annually in college football.
I tell you this. He wasn't going to do it for free.
No, of course not.
And he wasn't going to do it for charity.
No.
And so you almost feel like North Carolina might have had a little bit more of a bargaining chip to be like, hey, man, you really want to do this. I don't know if we can escalate this contract. It just always feels like who's negotiating this thing?
Yeah.
Because who are they negotiating against? What was the leverage play? They didn't have to put this amount of money into what I would say is an unproven talent.
Yeah. Yeah, and here the names that were being floated out there outside of Bill Belichick, like Glenn Schumann at Georgia, Tommy Rees, who's I think with the Browns now, former Alabama offensive coordinator, like guys who would have been essentially getting their first head coaching gig that you could have gotten for a whole lot cheaper than this. So if North Carolina is really committed to making football a priority, then okay, put your money where your mouth is, which they've done from the contract standpoint. Now they got to do it from the NIL standpoint as well.
Well, you go from you think about the concept of being really committed. Well, what is really committed if you're only saying this is a 3-year deal?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, not to be morbid, but at 72, I feel like 3 years out is about how much you can go. We can't sign extra long-term deals at 72 years old.
Now, we don't have any confirmation for sure that the Steven Belichick ascension plan is going to be put in place, but wouldn't surprise you if that would happen. But if that does happen, you then are just back to square one of a guy that's never been a head coach before that you could just be doing right now with Schumann or Reese or one of these other guys that are already on your list. So what is the ultimate end goal with this? Because here's the thing. You had Mac Brown, who you were supposed to bring in for the second time to put a foundation back under your program.
Would you argue that he did that or no?
To a degree. I mean, they're not awful. And when he took it over, Larry Fedora kind of had them down into the dumps. So he got them back on their feet to a degree, but they're not a perennial contender in the ACC as of right now, which is what many people thought they were going to be. So I wouldn't necessarily say he came in and did exactly what they hoped he was going to do. But it begs the question, like, is Bill Belichick going to come in and do that any better? Emmanuel Acho, who played for Mac Brown at Texas, put a video on X last night, and I thought he made a really good point. He's like, look, I played for Mac Brown, and I know Bill Belichick. Mac Brown is really good at all the other things outside of just coaching football. Very good football coach, but he's good at recruiting. He's good at being personal with players. Bill Belichick is a just football coach that wants to have his fingerprints on everything happening within the organization. You can't do that in college because there's so many things you have to account for and have to deal with that you have to put trust in your assistants, which Bill Belichick didn't like to do as much when he was in New England. So can Bill Belichick be a completely different version of himself at North Carolina? I don't know if he can.
That's the question. And maybe he wants to be a different version of himself. Maybe he's been living this life as Bill Belichick, the NFL guy who doesn't answer questions and is gruff with everybody. And maybe Bill is saying, hey, I want to be different. And he's going to be becoming a new, kinder, gentler, more lovable, huggable. Maybe this is him saying that he wants to be a different person.
I'll believe when I see it. Because when you've been coaching one way for
I agree
40 years, 40 plus years, it's really, you can say you're going to change. And I don't know when his introductory press conference is, today, tomorrow, whatever it may be. I'm sure he can say that, I want to go about it a different way. I want to try this, want to try that. But when it comes down to actually doing it, that's hard.
Again, speaking as someone who played for an older coach, who, by the way, was 62 at the time,
Yes.
which we were like,
he's a spring chicken
I don't know
compared
if he's going
to
to be able to make it.
Belichick.
playing for Lou Holtz, I can understand what some of these players are about to go through. It's going to be very different than even, like you said, even in Mac Brown.
Because Mac Brown seems very much like a player's coach, like a guy that's very relatable. And, there's obviously the age difference there, but somebody that can really get along well with his players. Bill Belichick, notoriously not that guy. And another thing that Emmanuel Acho brought up that I thought was really interesting, during the COVID season back in 2020, when NFL players were given the option to opt out, like, hey, this health thing's going on. If you want to opt out for the season, you can. The Patriots had more opt-outs than anybody else in the league. 8 players, according to him, opted out for that season. No other team in the league, I think, had more than 2. What does that say about the culture within New England? Yeah, it's great when you're winning because everybody will say, you know what, I don't love it here, but we're winning Super Bowls, we're going to the playoffs, I'll accept it. As soon as Tom Brady left and that winning wasn't happening, everything went in the tank, which is why he's no longer the coach up there anymore. What does that say about the culture outside of the winning that he had up there?
Which is another point that I think you bring up when you talk about this amount of contract. It's not as if you're bringing a hot commodity from the NFL. The NFL passed them over for whatever reasons.
Yep.
And the last 3 seasons without Tom Brady have been an abject disaster.
Mm-hmm.
So he can't even say that he was good at his last stop. The last 3 years have proven him not to be good. Obviously, everybody knows that he is one of the GOATs, one of the greatest, and he knows ball, and we get all of that. But does he? And does he know this? And I think it's, again, I'm not a North Carolina fan, so it doesn't affect me one way or another.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the story. I think it's going to play out in a variety of ways, but this is curious to me.
And look, he's allegedly bringing in Michael Lombardi to be kind of the GM of this program, and North Carolina says they're going to put a lot more, emphasis on the NIL front for football. But again, I believe when I see it.
Yeah, but even Michael Lombardi, famous name, even him, his experience with GM is where? In the NFL.
In the NFL, yep.
Where they have clear rules, they have boundaries, they have guidelines, they have laws. College football doesn't have any of these things.
It doesn't. And Belichick allegedly had this 400-page manifesto Bible on his exact plan on how he was going to do this and all that kind of stuff. Here's the thing, though. Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, Steve Sarkisian, they're miles ahead of you doing it at this level.
Shane Beamer.
Yeah, like everybody else is already, Bill Belichick's not going to come into college football and have some out-of-the-box way of doing things that's not already being done by the top programs around college football. He may think he's going to, but he's going to quickly realize, like, oh, no, I'm just behind everybody else.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It just reminds me of this time where, like somebody moves, say, a lot of times it'll happen, somebody may come from up north or they come from New York or something like that, like, that's not the way we do it. And people are like, yeah, we already have this.
Oh, we all went to that high school with that kid, right? Well, in New York, we're not in New York anymore, bud.
Yeah.
You're in South Carolina or Georgia or whatever.
We already
get used to it.
Yeah, we have running water up there. It's like, yeah, we have that too, Bill. Yeah. Bill was like, these players are going to get nutrition. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, guess what? Every program around the country worth their salt has nutrition and slides and everything else within their athletic facility. You're playing catch up essentially.
I'm interested to see how this turns out. We'll come back and have that discussion like that. But moving forward, they hired Bill Belichick because hiring coaches is hard. And 2 schools have found out that maybe sometimes you might just want to go back to that old flame. This is the early game.
and hope your commute is going well this morning. Highway 1 at Oakway Drive. We have a report of an accident there. Aside from that, no other major slowdowns to speak of, so we welcome that. The highway's a little bit more dry than they were yesterday morning. 55, that's going to be our high under sunny skies, but overnight low of 30. And for tomorrow, looking for a high of 58, a mix of clouds and sun. But we really should stay dry throughout the weekend and to start the next week. So good news there. But right now, it's a lot chillier than it was yesterday. We started out the morning yesterday at 67. Yeah, it's only 31 right now. So bundle up this morning on the early game.
That's right. We want you back.
Man, this is so good.
Scott Frost, we want you back. Rich Rod, we want you back.
Standing outside the window with the boombox up in the air.
We want you back. Speaking of coaching hirings, 2 coaches have gone back to places where they've had a lot of success. And if you don't know, that was Usher throwback. Appreciate it, Producer Jen. Thank you very much. This is really interesting to me. If you don't know, Rich Rod, I think yesterday just became official.
Yes.
That Rich Rodriguez, otherwise known as Rich Rod, has agreed to go back to the University of West Virginia to become the head coach again after he's had his stints at several places along the way since he left. Along those same lines, University of Central Florida head coach announced their new head coach, Scott Frost,
right,
who is their old head coach.
Which since getting fired at Nebraska, I don't think he was doing anything else.
He had a consulting job somewhere.
Okay.
He was working somewhere as an analyst or a consultant or something along those lines. I forget exactly where he was, but he's been working somewhere. Neither one of us are parts of these fan bases.
He was consulting with the Rams this year.
Yes.
Okay.
So I knew he was somewhere. Neither one of us are parts of these fan bases.
No.
Okay. From the outside looking in, really quickly, dub or loss?
Here's the thing. Coaches getting hired a second time around typically doesn't end up working out as good as it did the first time.
And it usually doesn't work out. It doesn't work out in relationships either.
Can you be good? Sure. Are you going to be great? Probably not. And again, Scott Frost, whether you want to give them the national championship or not, had a...
You mean you would reject the opportunity to bring in a nationally championship winning coach?
Whether you credit them with that or not, he had an undefeated UCF team in 2017 that won the Peach Bowl against an Auburn team that had beaten both Georgia and Alabama as the number 1 seed. They claimed the national championship and all that kind of stuff, which is what springboarded him, obviously, to going back home, his actual home in Nebraska, and then failing miserably there despite having the best 4-8 team that college football has ever seen. Rich Rod, of course, his last year with West Virginia was 07, back with Pat White and Tavon Austin and all those guys back there that were so fun to watch. We all remember the highlights on ESPN and those kind of things. And they won Sugar Bowls and were in the mix for the national championship and those kind of things. Pat McAfee, yeah, played for him as well.
He should just put that on his resume.
Exactly. Coach Pat McAfee.
I coached Pat McAfee.
I dealt with Pat McAfee. Is maybe the better way to put it.
More importantly.
And again, they had those programs playing at high levels. But in the history of second-time hires, typically you're never going to see those heights again.
Do you have some?
I do have some. Let's say Mac Brown at UNC, who we've been talking about. Second time around, not as good as the first time around. Greg Schiano at Rutgers. Now, yes, Rutgers is now in the Big Ten compared to the Big East from back in the day. Not as good. Bobby Petrino at Louisville. The second time around, yes, Lamar Jackson won the Heisman Trophy. Not as good as the first time around. And Obviously, a lot of controversy that came from those years before. You can have some that are pretty good. Like Bill Snyder in his second tenure was very good at Kansas State. You can make the argument he shouldn't have ever stopped being the coach there to begin with because he just makes Kansas State football work. Mike Riley in his second stint at Oregon State was better, but his first stint was only 2 years, and they were bad in those 2 years. So I wouldn't even really say that was that big of a difference. I'm sure there are other examples out there, but more often than not, it seems like making the same hire twice usually doesn't net better results.
So I guess my bigger question is, why do you go back and make this hire? Do you feel like you can't get anybody better? Are you trying to get that old thing back? Like, what do you think is the motivation for these types of hires?
I think the motivation is you want that spark again. You think what worked however many years ago is going to work again. And again, that doesn't usually end up being the case. And for Rich Rod specifically, because again, he left West Virginia, went to Michigan, didn't work, went to Arizona, and there's some controversy there, obviously ended up leaving. Was at Jacksonville State. They came in here a year ago and obviously gave Carolina a really tough game and, they were in their conference championship game this past year. That seemed like, especially for somebody, I think he's in his 60s now, that seemed like the perfect place to wrap up your career. Okay, you're at a group of 5 school. You've got him playing well. The pressure isn't really on you. You're not expected to go out there and, put him in the playoff every single year or something along those lines. It seemed like the perfect place to wind down your career. Why would you want to go back to a place in a wide-open Power 4 a conference like the Big 12 where your expectation is you should be competing for the conference championship? I don't know why you'd want to put that pressure on yourself again.
Because you had success there. And I
guess
think,
so.
I think both sides on this are looking back and saying, man, we were able to do some things here that were never done before. I had this place in a place that it's never been.
So let's think about this from a high school relationship standpoint. Mm-hmm. So, you're together as freshman and sophomore. It's great, cupcakes and rainbows and all that kind of stuff. You break up going into your junior year. Halfway through the senior year, you get back together. Who is sending that first text message here? Is it West Virginia?
I like where you're going with this.
Hey, is it Rich Rod? Been thinking, I thought pasture was greener on the other side. Turns out I miss you. Who is making the call first of I want to make this work again?
Well, I love where you're going with this. I think in UCF's case, they made the first call.
Probably.
They made the first thing. They was like, hey, Scott, I know it didn't work out. Sorry to hear about that. But listen, you know where home is. You know what we had. You'll always be my baby, like Mariah Carey. I think that's how that worked. In the West Virginia case, I think Rich Rod might have peeked back and looked back over that fence and said, hey, guys.
You think
listen.
so?
I think so, man. And Rich Rod is legit one of the 2000s offensive innovators. If he was to do Mount Rushmore or however you wanted to quantify it, a lot of the things that you see in today's offensive football, especially involving the quarterback run, the spread.
Yep.
Tyler, there was a time where Rich Rod was an innovator just for running the shotgun.
Yeah,
it's the spread.
The Pat White Wildcat offense was revolutionary in college football.
He's a legit innovator.
Was impossible to stop for a while. Obviously, everybody's caught up to that now, so it's not cutting edge like it used to be. But yeah, he was an innovator for a brand of football that still resonates today.
But you said he was an innovator in 2007.
Yes.
This is 2024. Long way away from that. People have caught up. People have stolen his schemes. People have improved and added on to him.
And here's the thing, too, and maybe this is a little more relevant for Scott Frost and his Rich Rodriguez, but I think about recruiting, right? Saying, okay, if you're Rich Rodriguez sitting in the home of whatever prospects you have for West Virginia, these kids don't know about what you did 17 years ago. Some of them weren't alive or were babies when you were having your success at West Virginia. That doesn't mean anything to them.
He's got to get McAfee.
I guess.
He's got to get McAfee to just run a little ticker across the bottom. He's got to make weekly appearances like Aaron Rodgers on McAfee. He's got to have to do something to get himself.
Yeah, maybe so. And you know what? If you can have McAfee in the building as your recruiting hype man a lot of times, maybe that'll help you out. But again, your success in the early 2000s means nothing to a 17 to 18-year-old now.
Yeah, and that's going to be difficult. Even when you try and turn on the game, you try and put on college football 07 for a new kid, and you'll be like, yeah, this is how we used to play. Even though Pat White was really good in that game, they're going to look at those graphics like, man.
Sure.
It's really old and dusty looking, Coach.
Yeah.
It's not as good as it's not very good anymore. I don't have any horse in this race. It doesn't matter. These two hirings are interesting to me though.
They are.
They are interesting to me, and that's the least I can ask.
And I don't know if we have any Central Florida or West Virginia fans listening to us, but I'd say temper your expectations because it's probably not going to be as good as it was.
Can't get that old thing back.
And for Scott Frost, you're like I mentioned Shiano earlier, you're coming back to a Central Florida that's now in the Big 12. It's a lot easier to be the king of the American Athletic Conference. It's a lot harder to do that in the Big 12 now.
We'll see how it goes. When we come back, we got 2 phone calls out there. I see you out there, Charles. I see you out there, William Wing. Get back to the other side. Let's continue this conversation about coaches hiring because 3 schools have definitely made choices. Good choices, bad choices, I don't know, but I'm always for making good choices. This is the early game.
Highway 1 at Oakway Drive, a report of an accident there. Earlier tie-ups have been cleared, so good news in that front. And good news, there's no rain today. 55 with sunny skies, overnight low of 30. Tomorrow, 58. Saturday will be 60. So, again, kind of nice weather for the middle of December. A cooler start, though, today than we experienced yesterday. Sitting at 31 currently on 107.5 The Game.
Welcome back into the early game. Preston Thorne, Tyler Head, Jen Jensen. We're talking coaching hirings, making choices. Thankfully, we have our coach in place, hopefully for a long time, locked up, secure. We'll see how that ends up going. But we're talking about schools making coaching hirings, and we got some phone calls out there. Let's go out to William first, talking about Carolina football. What you got, William?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted y'all's take on what do y'all think about Mike Shula being the OC? What kind of offense do y'all see him bringing? And do y'all see Shane Beamer and Clayton White getting contract extensions, which I think Shane Beamer and Clayton White need to be locked down, honestly. And what do you see them looking for in the portal, and what do you see Mike Shula looking for in the portal as he tries to develop his offense? I saw what he did with Carolina with Cam Newton, and, you know, that's kind of the offense I'm hoping to see now that we have a running quarterback like Lenore Sellers, is kind of that Cam Newton-esque Auburn offense that we saw. And I'll hang up, and thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate your call. Appreciate you holding. Appreciate you listening. I'll start with the contract extensions.
Mm-hmm.
They're in pretty good positions with Shane right now. I believe they just extended him last year.
Yeah, so right now he's extended through the 2027 season, and again got a bump in pay last year. Still kind of towards the bottom of the SEC in overall payments, which that could obviously change with the more success you have. And looking at this right now, Clayton White is contracted through 2025 at this moment.
Yeah, so these are good conversations you want to be having. His name's going to probably start popping up in some head coaching conversations, especially if they continue to have success. That's part of the deal. You want your guys to be in those conversations.
And looking at this, his salary is 1.2, which that's very high for an assistant. So I don't know how much higher you can go with that, because again, if they continue to have success, he's going to get picked off as a head coach somewhere at some point.
Again, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I would assume if Clayton does move on, it won't be because he's not compensated.
Right.
It'll be because he's making another choice.
Sure.
Which we'll talk about Scott Frost maybe warning him, like, hey, man, you happy. Maybe don't mess with being happy. But we'll get to that here in a second. As far as Mike Shula, I think there's another conversation about Mike Shula. The more I've thought about this, I really like this hire.
Yeah.
Because it's somebody I've always been saying this. I like having seasoned veteran coaches on the staff who he's already been a head coach. I'm not sure that's something that he wants to do again.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. But he seems to be very content with where he is in his career. And I think that brings an overall sense of calmness and peace to a coaching staff.
And to answer the question of what kind of offense, probably about the same one. And from what we've learned, he had a big say on how this offense developed with Lenore Sellers this offseason to be what it was. So he might add a few wrinkles here and there just for the fact that he's now calling the plays as opposed to Dow. But I imagine it's going to look largely the same than it did this past season, which is what you wanted and why you decided to go with him for continuity's sake. That if you couldn't get Dow Loggins, well, hey, let's get the guy that's been involved in creating this offense anyway.
Yeah, and also what I am coming to learn, and I guess I didn't realize as much during the season, is how much interaction he had with Lenore's on game days, being the consistent presence.
He was the guy on the sideline.
He was the quarterback coach during the season. So I think the more I think about it, it's not exciting. We didn't get a chance to have our coaching search and put our hot board up and all that. But I think the more I think about it, I'm really, really pleased with this hire.
And in terms of what they're looking at in the transfer portal, it seems like wide receiver is a pretty big target as of right now. I know Kevin Concepcion from NC State, who's rated as the second overall guy in the portal overall right now. If you've watched him at NC State, he's a fire plug and really electric out of that slot position. He's got Carolina in his top 6, and somebody like that would be a nice addition, which I know top 6, we're now just throwing out random numbers. Somebody like that would be a nice addition. Dane Key is a name that Weston Chris has been talking about a lot over the past couple games. It's something they kind of missed out on in the portal last year. We thought, hey, maybe Delvon Campbell, maybe Jared Brown could be one of those guys. Nobody ended up being a superstar wide receiver, which you still kind of need. As yes, you have Mazio Bennett, you have Nick Harbor that are coming along, but you need a definitive playmaker, which you hope they can get this time around.
You might argue that maybe Delvon Campbell was moving into that.
He was hitting his stride towards the end of the season.
He was going in that direction towards the end of the season. So I think the wide receiver position is in a better space this year than it was last year at this same time. Let's get out to Charles. Chapel Bill.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Hope you're doing well.
Doing well.
What I'm about to say, I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't think it's going to happen. It's just wishful thinking on my part. I hope Chapel Bill has a head coach in waiting clause in his contract for his son. I hope he got all the control in the world that he was looking for. And then as soon as he signs that contract, I hope he gets an NFL head coaching job and UNC is left holding the bag and has forced to have an inexperienced head coach in his son without Bill Belichick ever coaching a single down. I think that would be hilarious. Thanks for taking my call. Have a good one.
Appreciate it.
You know, that could happen.
I don't think that's out of the wider realm of possibility.
Because if Bill Belichick wants to get back to the NFL, it's going to have to happen soon.
Yes.
Right? Again, he was interviewed for the Falcons job, really wanted it. They decided to go with Raheem Morris because Bill Belichick wanted total control, and they didn't seem to want to give that to him. But you have a lot of jobs that are obviously going to be open this cycle. Likely won't be getting any of those, but let's say in November, December of next year, when insert whatever NFL teams fire their head coach, hey, Bill, you want to come back to the NFL? If he really wants to go back, why wouldn't he? And yeah, he's forfeiting a couple of tens of millions of dollars from not writing out his 3-year UNC contract, but still, he's an NFL coach. If the right opportunity presents itself, let's say it's the Cowboys, and I know him coaching under Jerry Jones seems like a power dynamic that wouldn't work, but let's say he really wants that job. You think he's going to say, no, I'm content at North Carolina if that job presents itself? I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either. I can't see it. And it's really interesting how things have maybe changed, but we know in college football, the idea of negative recruiting is there. We experienced it here at South Carolina when Spurrier said, I don't know if I'm going to be here for the next couple of years. All of a sudden, recruiting went in the tank.
Yep.
Well, Bill has only said he hasn't even said he's going to be there for a whole recruiting class. 3 years is not even a whole class, and that idea has changed. But I would imagine there's going to be coaches that being like, you think you're going to play for Bill Belichick, but are you?
Yeah.
You sure?
Well, and
which Belichick are you going to play for?
If the rumor of him positioning this for his son Steven to take over at some point, do we know Steven's going to be a good head coach? Like, you want to talk about nepotism? Like, all right, I'm coming to coach in college so I can set this up for you to be a head coach somewhere down the road. We don't know if he's going to be a good head coach. He's the DC at Washington right now. They're middle of the pack in the Big Ten.
Not very good.
That doesn't tell me that he's going to be a great head coach.
It absolutely doesn't. And also, traditionally, if we go down the coaching tree, Bill Belichick coaches, woof.
Which is crazy, right? Because of how great that organization was. Patricia failed. Joe Judge failed. Josh McDaniels, he has his own issues and reasons why he failed, but he didn't end up working out.
Charlie Weiss.
I mean, okay, Saban worked out, but that was a different deal.
Romeo Crennel.
Yeah. Sure.
Nobody can be Belichick.
Right.
Because I think that's a whole other conversation. People try to imitate the guy who they were under, and they're just not as good as they are. And
but you know what nepotism is going to work? Is we're going to have Shane Beamer, and then Hunter is going to come in right behind him.
I like it.
He's going to take over.
Succession plan.
Shane's going to have to sign the contract. Put Hunter in the deal.
So when we're negotiating for him to stay longer, Hunter better be on that deal.
When Shane retires in 2040 or 2045, it's ready for him.
Yep.
It'll be lined up.
And I mean that with all love and respect. I can promise you.
It'll be lined up for him. Yeah, I don't know. I think that though you presented it as something that may or may not happen, it could happen. While we're talking about coaches, Joe, I see you out there. I'm going to get to you in a second. We positioned it yesterday. Fran Brown. Rising up the radar. Rising up the charts. I think if we're giving superlatives, I think he's the best quote of the year. I think Gundy usually is in the running for this, but at the beginning of the season when he slightly advocated for DUI, that took him out.
He's done it 1,000 times himself.
That took you out of the running, Gundy. Gundy's usually here, but since Gundy's fallen off, Fran Brown might be taking his place. When we come back, we'll hear another quote from our guy, Fran Brown. This is the early game. Welcome back in. We're having a conversation about coaches. College football is maximum college football. Things are happening. Let's get out to Joe really quickly. Joe, you wanted to weigh in on the conversation. What's up, man?
What's going on, gentlemen? Good morning, Nate. Hey, Tyler, how you doing, buddy? Good
Doing
to have
good.
you in this morning, man.
Doing good. Appreciate it, man.
Good. I think Bill takes more vacations than a criminal, man. Now, if you didn't get that joke, laugh now and just think about it later. But listen, I love Shane Beamer, man. It's out of all of the people that he could have gotten to be offensive analyst or whatever he was, his position was before he became the coordinator, he picked Mike Shula. Now, if you think about the guys that Mike Shula has coached in the past, you have Cam being his major guy, but all of those guys were dual threat quarterbacks, and he did a great job with them. For him to be in the position that he was, to just from where he was to come to the OC now, it was a no-brainer for him, for Shane to pick him. It's like this is a home run hit, man, when he went and got Mike. I just love the transition that's being made, and I think that Lenoris Sellers would benefit so much more next year from having Shula to be his guy as an OC next year. It's great, man. I'm just so excited about what we're going to see next year on the field, because I think that Lenoris Sellers is a lot better passer than Cam was. Already, to me, I just think he's a lot better than Cam was. He's faster than Cam. He may not be bigger and stronger, but I look forward to seeing what Shula's going to do with him next year, man. Great show as usual, guys. Thanks for listening to me. I just want to hear what you guys have to say.
Appreciate it, Joe. Yeah, as I said, the more I think about it, the more I really analyze it. I'm very pleased with this decision from a coaching standpoint, from a staff standpoint, experience. All of that ends up working, and you have to have somebody who knows how to work with this type of special talent. And obviously, Mike has proven that he knows that. And
again, it's continuity, which is something that you unfortunately have not had with your OC and quarterback in Beamer's entire tenure. And yeah, you would have liked to have hung on to Dow Loggins for that reason, but this is the next best thing. If he can't be here, the guy that, again, was coaching Sellers every single week on the sidelines during the games because Dow Loggins is up in the press box, this hopefully will be a smooth transition.
Speaking of transitions, abrupt transition to our guy, Fran.
Yes.
He's rising up the ranks as the best quote in college football, and I respect it. Listen, man, especially when you're winning. And he's doing this in a little bit of a different way. He's not whining. He's not complaining. He's not kind of taking the lame route. He's just being himself. Jen, we got our guy, Fran Brown. I believe it's 14 from today's cut. Here is Fran addressing the transfer portal, and he doesn't mince words.
No, he does not.
I think we have a really close team. So when there's one of the brothers on the team that's spreading, I'm about to do this, I'm about to do that, and he's doing that in a negative way, to me, you're a snake, and I don't want to be around a snake. So it's kind of dry cut with me, you know. You start being a snake, you know. What do I need to do with a snake? Cut him by the head. Otherwise, he won't die. You can't give him an opportunity. We don't sit down and talk. We don't do things that way. As soon as you say you want to go and you were being sneaky, running around telling everybody, I'm going to make sure that you stand on what you say. That's kind of where we at with that.
You know, I don't feel like he's been able to articulate his position. He just doesn't seem very set in how he feels.
A man of convictions.
He's very direct. Essentially, he's going to make you stand on business. If you want to transfer, don't talk about it, be about it.
Yeah, and listen, man, he said if you're running around and you're being sneaky around there and you're talking about things, let's just go ahead and address it, and you can move forward. Not much different than other people say. I believe Kenny Dillingham had something very similar, like, hey, you want to go? We'll help you.
Yeah.
All right? But the guys that we have here, we need them all to be in here. Again, I just appreciate Fran's directness, his lack of coach speak, and his ability to just, as Jen said, to express himself very convincingly.
Yeah. And again, he was a defensive assistant at Georgia who they don't speak to the media. We didn't know this was bubbling under the surface when he was there. But, man, when he's gotten a microphone this year, he has been nothing but gold left and right.
He's been on fire.
And here's the thing. He's successful. They went 9-3 this year. They upset a top 10 Miami team in the last week of the regular season. They are having success very, very quickly in a place at Syracuse that hasn't always been, at least in recent memory, towards the top of people's minds in college football, and he's turning that culture in that way.
Well, that's what winning does, and here's the thing, Syracuse, enjoy them now.
Yeah.
don't know how long it's going to last. Even though I do understand that he's from in the Northeast, so that's the only thing that they may have going for them. But he's clearly a star in college football from being in front of the microphone. If he was a wrestler, you'd be like, he can coach and he can shoot, right?
He could cut some great promos.
He can cut a promo. So this is the guy that you want to have in your program. So keep an eye on Fran Brown. Not only did he hit us with the Washington's for winners or soap is for winners, he hit us with that. He hit us with the cut off the snake.
Yeah.
Cut off the head of the snake.
The McCord. He plays football. He's going to play football, which, by the way, Kyle McCord is going to play in the Holiday Bowl now.
He also hit us with the Dabo in mid-game.
Yeah, mid-game.
Post-game, he hit us with, hey, Dabo, thank us for that later. So this guy is a star. I am going to go ahead and nominate him as the best quote in college football currently. Gundy, I think you might have been surpassed. But listen, Gundy, you've been at the top for a long time, but Fran is coming for your spot.
Gundy's gotten to the point where the less he says is probably the better for him. Because again, when you're advocating for DUIs, we've gone a little too far.
We don't want to do that. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Chapel Bill. Get into the SEC honors, which there's a plenty of them, and we'll have a little bit more discussion about coaches going back. Focusing on Scott Frost this time because I think when you have a chance to hire a national champion, Tyler, you do it.
National champion in quotes.
This is the early game.
They say perfection is a journey, and our journey led us to Carolina Stone Craftsman just outside Columbia in Chapin. We did some renovation in a bathroom and needed a countertop, and they came through. The first time we met them, we toured their showroom, which is fabulous, and even toured their outdoor. They have a new outdoor display being constructed now, and I can't wait to tell you more about that. But we learned about the marble and the quartz and the granite and their commitment to everything being affordable. And there was so much to choose from. They helped us decide what we wanted. And it was such a great experience that when we recently did a master bath redo, we used them again for a countertop in there, and we're thrilled again with the process. Once the installation was complete, they checked on us, made sure it was everything that we wanted. They cleaned up like they'd never been there, and I'm telling you, I encourage you to reach out to Carolina Stone Craftsman. If you need any kinds of countertops for kitchen or bath, make sure you tell them that Jen Jensen sent you. They are family-owned and operated. Carolina Stone Craftsman, just beyond Columbia and Chapin, and beyond your expectations. CarolinaStoneCraftsman.com. Bluff Road near Lower Richland Boulevard, we do have an accident there. Another one to make you aware of, Highway 1 at Oakway Drive. Pine Plain Road near Stagecoach Road, there is an accident there in Lexington County. So be careful in those areas as far as your forecast is concerned. Yeah, we're looking for sunny skies. 55 will be our high. Tomorrow, 58 for the high, 60 on Saturday. Again, the overnight low tonight into tomorrow, going to be about 30. So another brisk morning on tap. It is 31 currently on 107.5 The Game.
We're going to take caller number 3 for a pair of tickets to the TSO, the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I say this every year, and unfortunately, I'm not going to do it again this year, but I want to see this. It's something that's been around it's like a thing.
Yeah.
So we'll take caller number 3, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, a pair of tickets today. Call in, get those. We appreciate you listening, and report back. Sometimes y'all get the tickets and we don't hear anything back from you. We want to hear you report back. Let us know how these events were. But welcome into the early game. It's Preston Thorne, Tyler Head, Jen Jensen. College football is on tilt, as it usually is.
It's going crazy.
As it usually is. We have hirings. We have reaffirmings. Shout out to David, who gave us a new term that we're going to be using.
I like that a lot. I think that's the best way to describe it. That doesn't sound, I don't know if dirty's not the right word.
No.
Doesn't sound as
Slimy.
off-putting as signed a new deal.
Yeah. So we're having players reaffirm. So all of these things are happening in college football, along with the idea that, hey, man, South Carolina just keeps racking up awards.
Yep.
They keep racking up awards. Yesterday, Shane Beamer was named the AP SEC Coach of the Year. It's important to distinguish that because the SEC coaches also put out their SEC Coach of the Year, and that was not Shane.
It was Clark Lee.
It was Clark Lee, who did a good job. Did a solid job. Great job.
I mean, to beat a number 1 Alabama team, and here's the thing, and I think it's a very well-deserved honor for Clark Lee as well. The expectation for them was way lower than what South Carolina's was because they got gutted in the portal last year. Remember, the past couple of years, any player that showed any kind of promise at Vanderbilt immediately got snatched up in the portal.
Yes.
That happened last year. Remember, AJ Swan was going to come to South Carolina before that ended up falling through the cracks there. But everybody that's been good with them has left, and most of their entire team left a year ago. They had to go out there and rebuild it completely in the portal, which is why they ended up bringing in so many guys from New Mexico State, like Diego Pavia, like Jerry Kill was the assistant coach, and the tight end Eli Stowers from there as well. So they completely rebuilt the team in the transfer portal and went out there and played some of the best football Vanderbilt's played in quite a while. So I do think that's a well-deserved honor for Clark Lee, getting that from the other coaches in the SEC.
Yeah, and I've been early to the Clark Lee train. I think maybe 2 years ago when Vandy was not playing well and they ended up beating Florida at the end of the year. And I was just like, man, he's doing a really good job, even though I don't think they had the talent to do that. So good for Clark. Kyle Kennard also picked up another honor to go along with his Bronco Nagurski trophy, voted SEC Defensive Player of the Year by the AP and the SEC coaches.
Yep.
So he picked up some more hardware. Nick Emenwari also voted AP All SEC First Team, which that's the top of the top. That's the top of the top. If you're first team All SEC, you are playing some ball. Also voted on by the SEC coaches, Lenore Sellers voted Freshman of the Year in the SEC. For some historical context, These names might mean something.
Mm-hmm.
Other Gamecocks who have received this award. Some dude named Lattimore, 2011.
He's pretty good.
Ended up being pretty good. Another receiver by the name of Rice, Sidney Rice.
He's pretty good as well.
Pretty good, 05. Free safety, Coach Simpson.
Yep.
It's pretty good. Steve Tannehill, legend. So he puts his name amongst Gamecock legends, essentially.
And this may surprise you. This is an award that isn't typically won by quarterbacks.
Right.
So in the past 20 years, only 4 quarterbacks have won this award.
Okay, I didn't know that.
For Lenore Sellers. That being Johnny Manziel in 2012, Jalen Hurts in 2016, Jake Fromm in 2017, and Bo Nix in 2019. 3 of those 4 guys ended up going in the first or second round of the NFL draft. So he's in high company with what the expectations of him after his freshman year are going to be.
I tell this story. I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. 04 spring, Coach Simpson comes into spring practice. He came from a prep school. He steps in the huddle. It was Coach Simpson and Jonathan Joseph. We was kind of stacked. He steps in the huddle. And immediately, I'm looking back at the other DBs like somebody's going to lose their job. This freshman is going to play over somebody, and he ends up being one of the best. Very strong comp to Nick Emenwari as far as playing the safety position.
Mm-hmm.
There's some arguments to be made there. But as soon as I saw him, it was like, oh, I don't know what y'all are doing, but he's going to be starting over somebody. Same thing, Sidney Rice, 05. Sidney was there in 04, and I told the story before. I don't know if you heard it, but Sidney was on the scout team.
Okay.
In 04. We couldn't stop him. All they would do is just throw the ball up to Sidney. And Coach Holtz was getting so mad that we couldn't stop this. You're letting the freshman do that to you. Like,
he's special, man.
I don't think this is a regular freshman.
Coach, why is he not playing? That's the better question.
Why is he on this side of the field? He needs to be over there. And Sidney was going to end up playing this year. He broke his hand before the Georgia game, ended up redshirting that year. Comes back in 05, gets freshman of the year. Again, that 04 team had a lot of talent on it. But I saw those things firsthand and was like, oh, yeah, these dudes are different than everybody else. Clearly, again, Sidney Rice, scout team, unfair. They're just throwing the ball up to him. He's making us look and he's kind of he's a humble dude.
Sure.
So he's not bragging or celebrating. And also, I'm a senior. We have other seniors that it's like, hey, freshie, chill out, man.
Yeah, it's like you're making us look bad, bro.
You're making us look so bad right now. But yeah, shout out to those guys, Sidney and Co. 2 Gamecock greats. Lenoris adds his name to that list, and it's only going to get better, hopefully, with the continuity, hiring Mike Shula, offense going in the right direction, and him getting more comfortable playing quarterback.
Well, and look, we know the pieces around him weren't the most ideal this year. Offensive line still wasn't great. Again, we didn't have a breakout superstar wide receiver. Josh Simon dealt with injuries at tight end, so that wasn't as perfect as you wanted it to be. The run game obviously came along with Rocket Sanders as the season went along. If you can add sure things around him, have a better offensive line, have a playmaker on the outside at wide receiver, who knows just how successful Lenore Sellers can be, because a lot of the offensive success they had in the last 6 games was Sellers just kind of putting the offense on his back. Again, I lost count how many sacks he avoided behind the line of scrimmage by ducking and, being like he was covered in butter and making those plays like the one that won the game against Clemson. If he can do that again next year with other guys to rely on around him on the offense, they might be unstoppable.
Also on top of that, top of Lenore Sellers coming back, we have some reaffirmations.
Yes.
We have some reaffirmations. So, and let me know if I'm missing anybody. We have Casey Henry, who has reaffirmed his commitment to the Gamecocks. Nick Barrett, who has reaffirmed his commitment to the Gamecocks. No graphic, though.
No graphic for him for whatever reason.
I don't know what that means.
Do we need a graphic for everything? Because here's the thing. There's 80-something scholarship guys. Are we going to get a graphic for all of them?
Well, does it mean something if you don't get a graphic? You got to look at these things. Like, why does he get a graphic and I don't get a graphic?
I guess if you're an anticipated starter, because, again, Jordan Howell was like your 3rd running back this year. He got a graphic.
He got a graphic.
So is that like the anticipation that he's going to be your guy next year, which is why he got it? Because, I don't know, if whoever is a 3rd string or 2nd string guy, it's like, I don't know if Marquis Anderson's expected to be a star next year, but if he reaffirms, do they graphic for him as well? Somebody that hasn't played a whole lot?
These are all the things that Bill Belichick and Chapel Bill is going to have to figure out about college football. He's going to have to be triggering out these things. If you don't know, UNC did go ahead and made the hire. 3 years, $30 million. Bill Belichick is now framed as Chapel Bill, and we'll see where this goes. This is going to be a very interesting development in college football. I'm always here for more personalities, even though he's not known for it. He has a personality, not known for being a personality.
I will say this. From North Carolina standpoint, and I was driving in listening to the After Hour show with Amy Lawrence, and I forget the name of the person that she had on, but somebody that covers North Carolina, and he was talking about the apathy that it kind of set in with football, especially at the beginning of this year when they lost that game to James Madison, and that's when Mac Brown went in the locker room and said, should I just retire now? You guys want me to do this anymore? And, all that. And the crowds just regressed as the season went along. And, they played NC State a couple weeks ago. There was more red than blue in the stands against your biggest rival. Like, people had kind of stopped caring. And they saw that, okay, this isn't going to get any better. So from an interest standpoint, you've at least gotten a lot of butts back in seats for the beginning of this to see how it goes, because people say, hey, got the best coach in NFL history, or one of them at least. He's going to be coaching our program. I want to go see what happens. Again, a lot of people are going to pour money into this, hoping that it's going to be as good as it can be. And again, if you wanted to pique interest in your program, you've done that.
Piquing interest, college football is never not good at doing that. They released the schedule yesterday.
Yes, they did.
We knew who we were going to play, but we didn't know when they were going to play them. And as much as we're all junkies for this thing, we all sat around and refreshed, updated, switched the channels because the schedule released.
It is. We're so addicted to this, right? Yesterday afternoon. So the announcement show was at 7:00 on the SEC network. Like, the coaches know the schedule before anybody else. Like, I think Bielema said the other day, yeah, I know my schedule. They're going to obviously tell you in a couple of days. So the information's out there. I was searching around to see if anybody had leaked the schedule earlier on in the day or not, because those kind of things happened. Like, again, I know the opponents. I know who they're going to play. We're just finding out the dates they're going to play them. But I wanted to know that so bad. I was willing to search for leaks earlier on in the day.
And that's why we're all here. That's why you're listening. That's why we're talking. That's what this thing is built about. When we come back on the other side, we'll look at the schedule, maybe get into which games you are really anticipating, home games, away games. Let's talk about the schedule. This is the early game.
Yeah,
feel like?
I mean, I look forward to, I didn't say this to their coach, but I look forward to never playing those guys ever again.
Bluff Road near Lower Richland Boulevard, an accident there. Also, we're looking at up in the Newberry area, Highway 76 at 773. And as far as your forecast, looking like nice conditions, sunny, 55 for the high, overnight low of 30, 58 on Friday with an overnight low of about 37. Saturday should be nice, mix of clouds and sun, and 60. So that, my friends, is why we live in South Carolina. It is currently trying to warm up a little bit. It's a whopping 32 on 107.5 The Game.
Challenging. That's just what life is in the SEC. You know, it's challenging for us every year, Alyssa, just because we play Clemson at the end of the season. We've got Virginia Tech, another Power 4 team at the beginning of the season. And then, as always, a really, really, really challenging SEC schedule. So, you know, the thing that, you know, jumps out, there's a lot that jumps out, but certainly this year, because of the schedule, and we know that next year is the same, just the locations are flipped. It was a very former SEC West heavy schedule. And then that's basically what the month of October is, if I'm not mistaken. It's like Ole Miss, LSU, Alabama, Oklahoma, 4 in a row there in the middle of the season as well. So that'll be challenging, some challenging road spots. But just like last year or this past season, our fans were so excited to go visit Norman, Oklahoma and Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I know Gamecock Nation will be excited about making a trip to LSU and then going back to Oxford, which we haven't been to since, I think, 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
There's been a grave mistake.
What is that?
Schedules were put out. October 25th, we play Alabama.
That's right.
At home.
That's right.
Homecoming.
No. Really?
South Carolina has scheduled homecoming for October 25th.
Are you sure?
I'm as sure as possible.
Oh, man.
Have they made a mistake, Tyler?
I wouldn't do that. I mean,
Well,
you got Coastal late in the season.
Coastal was an option.
You got a Vanderbilt coming to town. That's always a quintessential homecoming game in the SEC. See, here's the thing. As Alabama may not be as threatening as they've been before, don't give them because has anybody in the past 15 years scheduled Alabama for homecoming?
We may be in brand new territory here, unprecedented territory.
I guess we're looking at motivation, or like
Maybe.
they're going to be motivated, but
we're going to be motivated.
Mm-hmm.
Was Nick Saban ever scheduled at somebody's homecoming ever in his career?
I'm trying to see if that
we may have just breached new territory.
Wow.
This was just come out. This was on the Gamecocks Online, where they have all the schedule listed. They have all the events that they're going to be having for the days planned out early. Really, really cool.
And we know the Oklahoma game, that'll be another state fair game. We avoided that this year, but
so we do have a state fair game.
State fair, yep, Oklahoma.
So obviously the Virginia Tech game is at Atlanta. The September 6th game is the Carolina Band Day game. September 13th versus Vanderbilt. That'll be family weekend. That's another home game. September 27th, that'll be Teacher Appreciation Day. October 18th against Oklahoma. Nothing planned for that. October 25th, homecoming. November 22nd versus Coastal is Salute the Troops and Family and Faith Day. So, yeah, it is a thing. It is a thing. You've heard it here first.
I wouldn't have done that personally. Yeah, very much needed. I respect the confidence. I'll say that much. But I don't want to give them any more reason to be fired up than they may already have.
Listen, man, we have a better quarterback. Let me get into my rant phase early. We have a better quarterback. We have a more experienced SEC coach.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just having trouble taking the brand out of this, right? Because if you said, okay, we scheduled A&M for homecoming, like, all right, not what I would have done, but okay, sure, I can see where you're going with that. But I don't know, again, because we're still so conditioned to think of the Saban-era Alabama, and I get it, it's not that anymore. And again, that could be a team that has 2 or 3 losses by the time that game rolls around next year, but I don't know. I might have waited a couple years to kind of see them taper off a little bit more before I did something like that.
Hey, Fran Brown, if you want to get your folks fired up, just let them know that South Carolina scheduled Alabama as homecoming. I want to make sure we hear some of those phone calls coming in because that was a choice that was made. But aside from that was the development I just saw. Aside from that, are there any particular games that you are more interested in than others?
I mean, obviously the brands of playing Alabama, going to LSU, going to the Grove in Oxford, those kind of, stand out. And obviously avenging those 3 losses. I don't know. I think Oklahoma coming here, especially considering the fact you're probably going to get a lot of Oklahoma fans that want to make the trip. They're going to experience Williams-Brice Stadium. And from everything that I heard from those that went to the game, they were very welcoming and very inviting to new members of the new members of their conference coming in and, being out there in Norman. So I think that could be fun having Oklahoma here and just seeing another big blue blood play at Williams-Brice Stadium, for the first time ever, essentially. So those kind of stick out to me. Again, when you're playing the exact same teams for the second year in a row, there's no newness to it besides the venues. So going to Death Valley is cool, which again said, start bitch cut earlier. That's my top win if you can get it, if you can go in there and beat those guys.
Yeah, 803-404-6100. We asked it earlier during the 6 o'clock hour. We had 3 losses this year, obviously Ole Miss, LSU, and Alabama. Out of those 3, which one do you want to avenge the most? Which one is the one where you want to get that one? Obviously, we want them all. But if there's one that you had to put at the top, which one do you want? For me personally, we got to beat Ole Miss. We have to beat Ole Miss. We got to get Lane to kind of shut his trap a little bit, get him to quiet down, and it would feel personally gratifying as a fan to beat Ole Miss.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, that would be amazing.
That's for me. But let us know, 803-404-6100, which of those games do you want to avenge the most? Obviously, you want to win them all, but out of them, which one do you want to win? The trip to LSU is always great, always an opportunity to experience one of the most unique places in the SEC. So if you have an opportunity to do that, if you want to put that on the calendar, that might be something that could be really cool to experience.
Now, if you're planning on going to that game, let me ask this question. Would you prefer it to be a night game where, again, you get the full Death Valley experience, or would you rather have a kick at noon where you feel like the environment won't be a disadvantage to you as much?
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I get your question. I think I'm going with Jen's new way of thinking. Hey, we're a good team. We can march into places and we can win whatever. So we don't need other advantages. So from the fan experience, let's play them at night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's go ahead and play them at. We don't need any extra. Let's go ahead and beat them at their best.
Yep.
And let's go ahead, because that is I was fortunate enough to play at Death Valley at night, and it is everything that it's cracked up to be.
You played against Andrew Whitworth, right?
Strangely enough, yes. I didn't realize that till maybe 10 years later. I was like, huh.
So we were watching Thursday Night Football the other week, and he does the pre and post game show there, which he wears a jacket under a blazer now, like a hoodie under a blazer. Yeah. That's his thing apparently. And I told my wife, hey, Preston played against that guy.
Yeah, strangely enough, and I didn't realize that till it was like year 10 when he was in the league, and I was like, I think he played at LSU, and he was around the same time.
Nameless, faceless opponent.
Kinda, sorta. I mean, and obviously they were good at the time, but yeah, I did get a chance to play down there. It is everything that is cracked up to be, everything, all the hype, all the folklore. It is that.
What was more intimidating, that or Neyland in the early 2000s?
I would say LSU.
I think LSU.
Neyland is huge.
Yeah, and they're right on top of you.
It's huge. You maybe feel like when you're at Neyland, the closest you might actually feel to being a gladiator.
Yeah.
It's just you can't see you almost like you can't even see the sky.
Right.
It's so high up. But walking in Death Valley, you see the wooden bleachers, the 5-yard line hash, like all the things.
Did you have to walk past the tiger?
Yes.
Yeah.
Real.
Does that intimidate you?
It's not like it's intimidating as if it's going to scare you. You just realize, like, hey, man,
like that's a bleeping tiger.
You get the enormity of nature.
Sure.
You know, like you're like, oh, I don't stand a chance against this thing unless I have a weapon.
If it broke contain, I'm in trouble.
It's over. I'm not sanctioned anymore, I don't believe, but they would find a way to artificially make it growl when you walk by there, and you just hear the guttural primal tone.
Yeah.
You're like, man, there's no chance that if this thing wanted to end me, automatically it could.
There's a reason they put it next to where the visiting team runs out for that exact reason.
Yeah, man. So that would, if you are planning to make a trip or if you're thinking about making a trip, LSU is everything that it's ever cracked up to be. And maybe we might be good by then.
Listen, you talk about a signature win, one of many that Beamer's kind of racking up now. You go into Death Valley, and again, it doesn't matter how good or bad LSU is. You beat them at night, you've accomplished something, and that's something that you talk about for a long time.
That's something you want to accomplish. So they put out, before yesterday, we knew who we were going to play.
Yep.
Now, yesterday, we found out the dates we were going to play them on.
Now we got to find out the times.
Now we still have to find out the
5 months
times,
from now.
and we'll all be sitting around waiting for it. That's how good these folks are at keeping our attention. Casey, I see you out there. When we come back, let's continue our conversation about coaches and specifically how our coaching hire has affected the team moving forward. This is the early game. Preston here for our friends at Absolute Glass, the premier glass company of the Midlands, offering auto, home, and business glass repair. So if your glass is damaged, shattered, cracked, or broken, they can handle the job. If it's a cracked windshield, that's no problem. They'll come out to your location and replace it for you, usually for free, and they work directly with the insurance company to take away the headache. That's right. They'll come out to wherever you are, school, home, work, does not matter. Absolute Glass will take care of it for you. Now, if you're at home and you're looking to increase the value of your home with new windows and mirrors, Absolute Glass will take care of that for you too. Windows, mirrors, shower enclosures. We say it all the time. If you can see through it, Ray and Marianne at Absolute Glass can do it. So check them out online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com. That's online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com.
Bluff Road near Lower Richland Boulevard, there's an accident there, as well as Killian Road at Faro. Noxepa Drive near State Street, we do have a report of an accident. Monticello at Maine. And also Wessinger Road at Highway 76, kind of Dutch Fork Road. Also a report of an accident there. So things picking up. Do be careful, please. Dry conditions out there, which we welcome. And looking for high today of 55, sunny skies. Overnight low, another cold one. It's going to be 30. And your high tomorrow, 58. Right now, again, kind of holding steady, 32 on the early game.
Welcome back into the early game. Preston Thorne, Tyler Head, Jen Jensen. We're having a lot of conversation. We're talking schedules. We're talking honors. Chapel Bill, hiring of coaches. And Casey, you wanted to get in talking about the hiring of the official hiring of Mike Shula and Lenore Sellers. Casey, what's up?
I mean, I hope y'all are well, and that's what I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to let that simmer for a minute.
Okay.
I want Ole Miss so bad I can't stand it. We've got to beat Ole Miss. That's the game I want. And we learned we get 2 losses. And one thing we can't forget about, this schedule is the strength of it and what we're going into these games ranked as. So each game is very important. Each game is a huge game. I mean, we're going to go into Virginia ranked really good. So for them, that's going to be a big game. So throughout the nation, we're looked at differently. So we really don't have a chance to slip up. But if I had to have a game, I want to hurt Ole Miss really bad. But Cam Newton's a podcaster now, and I know that Mike Shula had connections with Cam, and I wanted to ask how hard it would be to maybe get Cam to maybe shed some light on this coach for us and get him on the show. And that was kind of my question on Mike and Lenore.
Well, I don't know if pulling Cam is going to be easy.
Well, we do. Here's the thing. We might not be able to get Cam. However, Travell Wharton was the right guard for that offense.
Okay.
So we may be able to get some indirect and maybe a little bit more succinct. we may not want Cam, but
we could potentially get a former player that can speak on him. I just don't know if it's going to be Cam.
Yes.
That'd be very cool. I don't know if our door's big enough for the hat that he would wear. But if he wants to come on, I'd welcome it.
Yeah, good call, Casey. Appreciate your call. Yeah, I am going to – Travell's busy coaching the O-line for the Ravens right now, so
they got a few things going on.
He got some things on his plate, but we may be able to reach out to Travell and get some insight as far as what it's like to block in the Shula offense, what it's like to – I'd be interested to hearing what it's like to block for such a dynamic talent at quarterback, because they were together for a significant period of time, and Travell always has nothing but glowing things to say about Cam.
Yeah,
he doesn't have to say about all of his teammates, but
sure.
He always said Cam was a tremendous leader, tremendous quarterback, and a great teammate. Maybe contrary to what people may think about Cam, I'm not sure what people think, but
I don't want to get off on an aside here, but I had this thought the other day in thinking about Mike Shula and obviously Cam Newton's story and all that kind of stuff. If Cam Newton never got kicked out of Florida and he ended up taking over after Tebow, would Urban Meyer still be there? Would they still be the dynasty of college football? Because the ripple effect that had on the sport of college football can't be overlooked here. I don't know why that popped into my head the other day, but I was thinking about that. Wow, how different would college football be now if Cam Newton stayed at Florida?
So I'm going to take that, and since we're doing hypotheticals, would we be in this college football playoff if UCF didn't falsely claim a national title championship? Were we moving there, or was that the tipping point?
We were moving there. Look, the Group of Five doesn't really have that much power, so the AAC could jump up and down and scream all they wanted to. They're lucky they got included in this to begin with.
Glad you're here.
Yeah, and look, the circumstances of Scott Frost being able to claim a national championship were so specific that, because again, they played Auburn, who had lost the SEC championship game after beating number 1 Alabama and number 1 Georgia in the final 3 weeks of the regular season. That could almost never happen again, it seems like. And by the way, that Auburn team wasn't very interested in that Peach Bowl. It didn't seem like. So, take that with a grain of salt. But hey, they want to claim that. That's fine. Makes them feel good, whatever. They've obviously fallen off since then. Again, he's coming back. Don't expect the same results because you're in a much tougher league now.
I want you to run this back for us again. You did a great job during the 7 o'clock talking about the second chance opportunities when coaches go back.
Yeah.
If you have not heard, Scott Frost will be going back to UCF to take on to be their head coach again after leaving to go to Nebraska. We'll talk about that here in a second. And Rich Rod has been hired as the coach at West Virginia. If you're a fan of those two teams, you probably are feeling a bit of nostalgia. You're probably feeling some warm and fuzzies for when you were really successful. But Tyler might have some reality for you.
Yeah, so when you kind of look at just recent history, and look, there's been a lot of guys that have come back to their old stomping grounds a second time around, and, in the history of college football, but kind of looking in recent years, in my era of college football, more often than not, it doesn't end up being as successful or even close to as successful as the first round, go-around was. Been talking about Mac Brown and UNC a lot. Second go-around was not as good as the first go-around was. Greg Schiano at Rutgers. And yes, that was a Rutgers team that's now in the Big Ten compared to the Big East. Second run not as successful. Bobby Petrino at Louisville. Yes, Lamar Jackson won the Heisman Trophy. Overall, teams not as successful as they were when he was there back in the early 2000s. You do have some exceptions. Bill Snyder in his second go-around at Kansas and Kansas State, which
he is Kansas
State football, and you can make the argument that maybe he shouldn't have stopped coaching there to begin with. Mike Riley was better in his second stint at Oregon.
Put a pin right there.
Oregon State.
Put a pin right there with Bill Schneider because he didn't leave to go somewhere else.
Yeah, he retired.
He just retired.
Yeah, and they were like, well, the program's kind of in bad shape. I need to come back and get it back on track. So there are some exceptions, certainly, but more often than not, it's not going to be as good as it was because, and thinking about somebody like Rich Rod, at West Virginia, what he was doing in the mid-2000s was innovative and doing something that nobody else in college football is really doing. The game catches up to you, much like Hugh Freeze now that he's at Auburn. When he's at Ole Miss, he was doing innovative things on offense that was, very hard to stop. Well, now everybody's doing that, so it's not as innovative as it was. And Rich Rod, again, has had success at Jacksonville State these past couple of years at a group of 5 level, but he's not going to come back to West Virginia and suddenly make them an 11-1, 12-0 team again because what he's doing is not unique anymore.
And he was successful at Jacksonville State. We saw them last year.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it's a gimmick.
No.
But he has a specific style of offense which is yet to see if he could work on this next level.
Exactly. And to me, I thought he's 61 years old. I thought being at a Jacksonville State was the perfect place to wind down his career. Had success at West Virginia the first time. Went to Michigan, didn't really work out. Went to Arizona State, didn't really work out. Okay, we're going to go to Group 5 and coach for 5-8 more years, probably win some conference championship games, maybe play in some big bowl games, maybe upset, some Power 4 teams here and there. But it seemed like the perfect no-pressure place to wrap up your career. Why he'd want to go back to West Virginia, I don't know.
Because everybody in your minds thinks that you can do it one more time.
Of course.
You always feel like, if they just give me all the tools, give me the things, I can do this again. And it's no different from coaches, players, or whoever. You're never going to get that feeling out of your mind that I can get this done.
Well, the game has obviously changed. I seriously wonder how many people within the athletic department are still there from 2007.
I would say 0. You don't have to – you could look at the South Carolina athletic department.
Sure.
Totally changed from that time period.
So, yeah, the school and the logo on the helmet hasn't changed, but pretty much everything else has. So you're not going to go back there and likely replicate the same success.
You think Rich Rod drives on campus the same way you might drive to – I'm sure when you go back to Athens or when I come to Columbia, you're like, when they build this?
Yeah,
what's that building?
And then suddenly the roads have changed. You don't know. You get lost. Like, wait, because it has been a minute since I've been here or whatever.
You guys still go to the little funky bar down there?
They tore it down.
Yeah, that's not a thing anymore.
And again, when I think about Rich Rod trying to recruit 17, 8-year-olds that weren't alive when he was having that success, hey, I was doing this with Pat White back in 2006. Who's Pat White?
Yeah, you would be amazed. Yeah, you'd be amazed how quickly things change. And I always try to hammer this point home. For us especially. So we talk about Rich Rod. He was very successful at Clemson. Again, and legit offensive innovator, genius. Running the offense they were running with Woody Dantzler. You could go to Orangeburg right now and talk about who was maybe one of the greatest athletes to ever walk through the state of South Carolina and be like, they just hired Rich Rod. He was the OC at Clemson when Woody Dantzler was there. And those football players at OW would be like, who?
Yep.
What? They did where? What are you talking about? Because that's how quickly these things change. So I think a lot of times us older folks, we think there's more cachet in the past than there actually might be. That being said, Scott Frost moved on. He had the job at UCF, and it happens to everybody. Mama came calling. And the old Bear Bryant quote is that once mama calls, you have to go. And you can't blame him from leaving UCF.
To go back to his alma mater.
You have to go there.
And by the way, it seemed like perfect hire at the time.
It was a great hire. It's a home run hire that just didn't work.
We just kept waiting like, okay, if it's going to get better. He's going to get his guys in there. He's going to innovate this, innovate that, implement this, implement that, and it just never happened. And they eventually moved on for him, and now are rebuilding with Matt Rule. But somebody made the call, either Scott Frost or whoever the AD at Central Florida is. Hey, been missing you, been thinking about you. Gus walked out on me. Why don't you come home?
Yeah, and as you said, things might change. It's like, hey, times change, feelings change.
Remember the good times we had? Let's recapture that.
For the good times. To wrap us up, we'll come back. I think Scott Frost put it perfectly when he talked about the idea of maybe you shouldn't discount happiness. As we talk about all these jobs, maybe there should be a premium on you actually being happy somewhere. This is the early game. All right, y'all. Appreciate you hanging with us. We've had a heck of a day, a newsy day. Tyler, appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Waking up early to hang with the crew. Jen, appreciate you as always.
On days when we have all this stuff to talk about, it's easy.
Yeah, man. Who would have anticipated we'd have this much to talk about on a sleepy midweek day in the middle of
like your hump
December.
day.
On my hump day, which for those who don't know, I declare that Thursday is actually hump day.
Do you get and maybe this is different that you're out of school like all of us are, do you ever get that excitement on Thursday evening when you were in school of hey, tomorrow's Friday? Do you get that same kind of excitement
you say
still?
School as a teacher or school as a student?
As a student.
Well, see, that's the thing. My experience is more as a teacher.
Yeah.
And yes, you've never seen people who are more excited for Friday than teachers. You think students are excited? Ooh, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, I do. I do understand that feeling of excitement on a Thursday, which is actually hump day. To finish us off, we have a little bit of philosophy from our guy Scott Frost, who was reaffirmed his commitment.
He reaffirmed his commitment.
He reaffirmed his commitment to the university.
They got back together.
They are back together. They are back. And here's Scott talking about some of his thought process in the hiring.
When you're climbing the ladder of success in life, sometimes they forget to tell you to stop when you're happy. That being said, there was a lot of pressure. And the biggest thing for me is my dad wasn't doing well, and I got to spend time with him. My wife and I were lucky enough to have 2 daughters born at the next place I went. And, you have good times and bad times everywhere. And this game, sometimes you get it done and sometimes you don't. We did the right things here and pushed the right buttons and got it done. And I think we can do that again. In fact, I know we can do that again if we do the right things. UCF, to me, is unique in the country because it's still in its infancy. It might be a toddler now. When I came before, maybe it was in its infancy. But most schools in the country, when you look at the landscape of college football, are kind of pegged where they are. And generally speaking, that's where they're going to be. Always thought since the first time I came until now that the potential for growth and status in college football is bigger here than it is other places. And I'm excited to take the challenge to try to get it there.
Jen, can we run that clip back and just stop it after the first part again? I wanted everybody to hear the whole quote, but then wanted to focus on the first part. So can we hear that one more time?
When you're climbing the ladder of success in life, sometimes they forget to tell you to stop when you're happy.
That's a bar.
That's deep.
That's something that I think obviously all of us have to think about. But when we're talking about these college coaches moving on, advancing, getting new jobs and things of that nature, sometimes, and maybe even the players with the transfer portal, sometimes you might be happy somewhere, and being happy somewhere, we sometimes overlook the idea that, hey, I like you here.
Sure.
In pursuit of the next goal or the next thing. And I think Scott is trying to just, hey, let everybody know that, listen, even though it might be the next thing might be bigger, better, sometimes it's okay to be happy somewhere.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have a goal in mind, are you sure that happiness is going to come when you reach that goal? Because it may be a case of you love the thrill of the chase. So once you reach that goal, it's like, oh, now what? So, yeah, is the grass always greener?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think about how hard the Nebraska experience must have been for him. Because, again, it seemed like the perfect opportunity. Here is the former quarterback coming back home to lead the program that was once the powerhouse of college football that's been dormant for a while to potentially bring them back to that glory. And he goes there and completely fails. So I imagine that's pretty hard on the guy because, again, he was poised as the savior of Nebraska football and failed at it. So coming back to Central Florida, where he was loved and obviously brought them to great heights that they were, okay with seeing him go because they understood the opportunity. Maybe that was his happy place, and now he's back there, and we'll see what they can do. Again, I don't think it's going to be as successful as it was when he was, going 13-0 a couple years ago, but we'll see.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. So the golden child returns to Nebraska. It's not what he thought it was going to be. It's not what they thought it was going to be. He finds out that maybe just maybe, I had what I was looking for at UCF. I had a successful team. I was coaching. I was doing all the things that I wanted to do. And I just think that's really pertinent. Jen, can we get that one more time, just in case you listen out there? Because I think this applies to all of us as we all try and move forward. One more time, Scott.
When you're climbing the ladder of success in life, sometimes they forget to tell you to stop when you're happy. So
just remember, when you're climbing the ladder of success, if you are happy, don't discount that. Don't discount that, or don't think that there's more happiness on the other side. Like,
sure.
Maybe you might be good where you are.
If you're in a comfortable place, sometimes staying there is okay.
Well, never want to discount happy, because that is important, and I think you'll find that at all these different various income levels, job levels, and things of that nature. Well, Tyler, it's been a blast, man.
Absolutely.
Always appreciate you hanging out. We have not had an update. The transfer portal opened on Monday. Bill's mysteriously missing. We don't know. He has not reaffirmed his commitment.
When he comes back on Monday, assuming he comes back on Monday, before you do anything, be like, Bill, are you reaffirming your commitment to the early game?
Yeah.
Bill, we need you to reaffirm your commitment to the early game before we proceed forward.
We can get a graphic ready and everything.
Oh, I can be graphic.
Oh, we know Jen can be graphic.
We'll get that graphic that is graphic for Bill's return. Listen, man, appreciate all y'all listening. Thank y'all. Tyler, appreciate it, seriously. And we will continue. I'll be back tomorrow with Elijah. We'll be on location. We'll have more conversation. Going to get some analytics out of Elijah tomorrow. We'll see how that works. Appreciate y'all.